Okay, so let's dive into something really interesting today. We've got this whole stack of materials, articles, notes, research.
Right, pulled from various places, major outlets, others too.
Exactly. Reuters, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, New York Post, you name it. And it all centers on, well, Elon Musk's recent exit from his White House role.
A pretty high-profile departure.
Definitely. So our mission here is to really unpack what these sources are telling us about his time leading the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, as it was often called.
Understand the context, see what stands out, what happens
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Let's get into it. What jumps out right away from all this material?
Well, the first thing is just the specifics of the role itself and how long he was in it.
Right. So the core fact, reported everywhere really, is that Elon Musk officially wrapped up his job as a special government employee on May 30th, 2025.
And that job specifically was leading DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency.
And the duration,
It's noted he served for 130 days.
130 days. That number isn't just random, is it? Feels specific.
No, and the sources highlight this, that 130 days was actually the maximum time allowed for that particular kind of position.
Ah, the special government employee role.
Exactly. So his leaving wasn't necessarily abrupt. It marked the natural end of that specific appointment.
Okay, that's important context for the official exit part. Okay. So let's dig into DOGE itself. What was this department actually set up to achieve based on what we've gathered?
Well, the initial aim described in these sources was, frankly, incredibly ambitious
It was.
to fundamentally streamline federal operations and make massive cuts to government spending.
Massive seems like the right word. I mean, the sources even mention a specific initial figure Musk himself proposed for savings.
Yes, they do. The target cited was, well, aiming for an eye-watering $2 trillion in savings.
2 trillion. Wow. Okay, that certainly gets your attention.
The huge number.
But the outcome reported in these same materials paints a, let's say, different picture of what actually happened.
It does. The information indicates the actual savings achieved were, well, considerably less than that initial goal. They came in around $175 billion.
Okay, $175 billion is still, a lot of money saved.
Absolutely, it's a substantial sum.
But that gap between the $2 trillion target and the $175 billion result is, well, vast. And it seems it gets even more complicated. Some analyses suggest potential costs.
Yeah, this is where you need to look at the whole picture these sources present. Some of the analyses they cite suggest that the very measures DOGE took might have actually cost the government something like $135 billion.
Wait, hang on. Cost the government. How does an effort focused on efficiency end up costing money?
Well, the reporting connects these potential costs to the disruptions caused by the approach.
Disruptions and legal challenges.
Exactly. Which takes us right into the next point, the approach and the controversies that seem to follow.
Okay, so how did DOGE, under his leadership, reportedly try to hit these targets?
The method described across the board is one of rapid sweeping changes.
Like what kind of changes?
Things like proposals to close entire agencies, significant job cuts planned for the federal workforce. Pretty drastic stuff.
And it sounds like this very disruptive approach is where a lot of the friction and the major challenges came from.
That's precisely it. What's really clear from pooling these sources is that his tenure was marked by quite a few legal setbacks.
And a lot of criticism, right? Public and political.
Yes, considerable criticism. The legal challenges seem particularly prominent in the reporting.
To actual lawsuits.
Multiple lawsuits filed against the government directly linked to actions taken by DOGE.
Yeah. And what were the grounds for these lawsuits? What were the allegations?
They were serious. The claims included things like violating privacy laws, overstepping constitutional boundaries,
Wow.
and causing, undue harm to essential public services through these rapid changes.
Violating privacy, constitutional limits, those are really heavy allegations. That goes way beyond just sort of bureaucratic infighting.
Definitely.
So how did this play out more broadly? Public reaction, politicians?
It was very mixed, as you might expect. The sources portray supporters as, praising the effort to cut through red tape, challenge the status quo.
Seeing it as necessary disruption.
Kind of, yeah. Necessary disruption to shake things up. But the critics, obviously, saw it very differently.
How so?
Well, the materials suggest critics viewed the whole approach as just overly disruptive, maybe lacking nuance, and ultimately not effective in reaching the big goals without causing significant harm along the way.
And this wasn't just like op-eds and debates. There were actual public actions.
Yes, his involvement reportedly did spark protests. The sources even mention specific movements,
Oh, yeah.
like one called the Tesla Takedown. Apparently, it aims specifically at opposing his influence in government, partly because of DOG's actions and this perception of overreach.
Tesla takedown. Interesting how that directly connects back to his business world. Which actually brings us to the next point. Did his government role have any spillover effect on his companies?
This is a really significant angle highlighted in the sources, yes. They report clear repercussions for his business interests,
Particularly for Tesla.
especially for Tesla, yeah.
And what kind of impact are we talking about, according to the reports?
The sources state pretty directly that Tesla faced significant sales declines during this period.
Actual sales declines.
Yeah.
And do the sources explicitly link that to his government work?
They do. They attribute the declines largely to public backlash.
Backlash specifically against his role in the administration and the DOGE controversies.
Exactly. The idea being that his association with controversial policies, the protests, the calls for boycotts, all of that reportedly hit Tesla's public image and, consequently, its financial performance.
It really underscores that complex, sometimes risky territory when a major business figure steps so publicly into a government role.
It absolutely does.
So looking ahead now, his formal role, the 130 days, that's finished. But do the sources suggest his involvement is completely over?
Not quite. There's a quote from President Trump indicating Musk would continue to be involved, just unofficially.
What was the quote?
Something quite direct. He's not really leaving.
He's not really leaving. Okay. And what about Musk himself? What have the sources picked up about his intentions?
The materials suggest he's expressed an intention to stay on as an advisor.
An advisor, but maybe shifting focus.
Yes, with a stated plan to put more of his attention back onto Tesla and SpaceX.
Which, thinking back to those reported sales declines at Tesla, certainly makes sense from his perspective.
You could see why, yes.
Okay, what about DOGE itself? The Department of Government Efficiency. Is it just going to fold now that Musk's special role is done?
No, the sources indicate it's expected to continue its operations. The initiative carries on.
Right. And any word on who might be spearheading those efforts going forward?
The reporting suggests DOGE's future work will likely be led more directly by members of the president's cabinet and the president himself.
So, more integrated into the existing structure.
Seems that way. And there's also some speculation mentioned in the sources about Russell Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB,
What about him?
that he might take a more prominent, perhaps leading role in driving these efficiency efforts forward from within OMB.
Interesting. So, the specific high-profile, time-limited SGE role is over.
Right.
But the actual push for government efficiency is set to continue, maybe becoming more formally embedded within existing structures like OMB, possibly still with some informal input from Musk.
That really seems to be the picture these different sources paint when you put them together. A shift maybe from that outside-in disruption model to something more integrated.
Though perhaps still drawing on that informal advice channel.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Well, this deep dive through the sources, it's really shown a light on the huge ambition, the very real challenges, and some pretty unexpected consequences of this whole government efficiency drive.
Definitely.
We've seen that massive target versus the reported outcome, the really controversial approach that led to serious legal fights and public reaction.
The impact spilling over into his business world.
Right, and now this plan for the effort to continue, just maybe in a different guise, perhaps still with his informal influence.
It's such a complex case study, isn't it? Trying to apply that sort of disruptive, almost tech sector mindset to the massive entrenched structures of government.
It really is, and it makes you, the listener, think about some fundamental questions this whole episode raises.
Yeah.
Like, can that kind of truly disruptive change actually be implemented effectively within existing government frameworks?
Or is there something inherent in bureaucracy, the legal checks, public accountability, that just resists that kind of rapid top-down shock?
And maybe even, how do we really measure efficiency when we're talking about public services? Especially when you have to account for the potential costs of the disruption itself, not just the savings.
Big question.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of things this story leaves you chewing on. Something to definitely keep in mind as these government efficiency efforts, in whatever form they take, continue.